Iran has just redrawn the map of the world's most critical shipping lane. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps claims the Strait of Hormuz is no longer a narrow choke point, but a vast operational zone. This is not a bluff. It is a calculated shift from deniable harassment to strategic coercion designed to force a diplomatic reset. By redefining the zone, Tehran is raising the cost of sanctions to a point where global shipping must stop and pay. Here is how this change in the rules of engagement transforms maritime logistics from a transit corridor into a high-risk node, and why it signals a fundamental pivot from asymmetric warfare to explicit deterrence. For decades, the strategy in the Persian Gulf relied on ambiguity. Iran would harass vessels, seize boats, or threaten to close the strait, but always with a layer of plausible deniability. A commercial captain could navigate the narrow waters by assuming the threat was localized, temporary, or a bargaining chip that would vanish once negotiations began. This approach allowed global trade to flow with only minor disruptions. Insurance premiums rose slightly and reroutes were occasional, but the system remained functional. The risk was treated as a variable, a geographic factor that could be managed with standard maritime protocols. Now consider what happens when that variable becomes a constant. The Irgc officer's declaration effectively converts the entire region into a distributed denial-of-service scenario for maritime logistics. By expanding the definition of the zone, they are forcing every global shipping company to treat the whole area as a high-risk node rather than a transit corridor. This is not just about blocking a few ships, it is about changing the risk model for the entire supply chain. When the zone expands, the probability of disruption approaches 100% within those boundaries. Quick resource note: I keep a curated set of Amazon search links in the description for books, gear, and tools relevant to this channel's topics. Some are affiliate links, so I may earn a commission at no extra cost to you. Please consider supporting the channel by using those links if you find something useful. This shift eliminates the buffer that previously allowed commercial vessels to bypass localized threats. You no longer have a situation where a captain can choose to steer clear of a specific threat area. Instead, you have a binary stop or pay decision matrix. Every vessel entering the expanded zone faces a choice: halt operations entirely or accept the new terms of engagement. This forces diplomatic engagement because the cost of sanctions enforcement is now internalized by the Irgc as a localized infrastructure failure. The zone becomes a software-defined perimeter that can be dynamically toggled to disrupt specific supply chain nodes. The implications for global logistics are profound. Insurance premiums will not just rise, they will skyrocket as carriers can no longer rely on historical data to predict risk. Route latency will increase exponentially as ships are forced to wait for clearance or reroute around the entire Persian Gulf. The expansion transforms asymmetric warfare into a grid-based deterrence model. The Irgc is no longer patching the system with targeted seizures. They are building a firewall that denies access to the entire region. This represents a fundamental architectural change in the region's security posture. The move from reactive patches to proactive denial signals that Tehran is prioritizing long-term diplomatic leverage over short-term kinetic gains. They are willing to disrupt the global economy to force a negotiation table. The cost of maintaining the status quo has become too high for the international community. By turning the strait into a total zone of denial, Iran is making it clear that the current sanctions regime is no longer sustainable. Think of this as a shift from a security system that alerts you to a break-in to one that locks down the entire building. The old system allowed you to manage the threat. The new system forces you to deal with the threat or lose access to the building entirely. This is why the declaration is so significant. It is not a threat of violence, it is a threat of total disruption. The Irgc is using the geography of the strait as a weapon to break the economic pressure. The strategic calculation here is that the cost of a global supply chain disruption is higher than the cost of sanctions relief. By creating a distributed denial-of-service scenario, Iran is forcing the world to choose between accepting their terms or paying a price that no economy can absorb for long. This is the new reality of the Persian Gulf. The narrow strait is gone. In its place is a vast, volatile zone where the rules of engagement have been rewritten. This pivot marks the end of the era where Iran could threaten the strait without consequences. The consequences are now baked into the system. Every ship that enters the zone is now part of a strategic coercion campaign. The Irgc has turned a geographic feature into a policy tool. This is a move that changes the game for everyone from oil traders to logistics managers. The world must now adapt to a new normal where the strait is not a highway but a checkpoint controlled by Tehran. The shift from asymmetric warfare to explicit deterrence means that the next escalation will not be a surprise attack. It will be a calculated systemic disruption. The Irgc has signaled that they are ready to use the strait as a lever to break the international consensus. This is a high-stakes gamble. If they succeed, they force a diplomatic reset. If they fail, they risk a full-scale military response. But the move itself is a clear signal that the old rules no longer apply. The strategic landscape has changed. The narrow choke point is a thing of the past. The expanded zone is the new reality. Global shipping must now navigate a world where the cost of doing business has fundamentally shifted. The Irgc has made it clear that they will not be deterred by the threat of sanctions. They have turned the strait into a weapon of mass economic disruption. This is the new game, and the rules have been rewritten. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I am a one-person team working hard to make each video better than the last. Subscribe if you found value. It is the best way to show support. Drop a comment with your biggest takeaway. See you in the next video.